Yo, 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 yo. Yo, visualize shark takes, hit the wave grinding. In the chat, gun shark odds make it rhyming. Sunday vibes, smooth bets, no confining. Acts engaged, can't stop us from shining. Bet on the spread, liking it, keep it tight. Push the odds further, jack on a hindsight. Odds fellows mind grasping the right sight. Hats, caps on heads, winners in plain sight. Hit the light, get in the chat, feel the flow. Cash it, every dollar, see the bank roll. Sunday grinding picks, now you gotta know. Extra points on the screen, sharp minds always glow. Big parlays, predictions we hold. Standing tall, betting knowledge all.
On a suddenly not so casual, sharp Sunday in December, it is NFL The Extra Points, the big show, week 15, Sunday, December 15th, 2024. The Shark, the Gun, the Odds Fellow, right here live on Sharky Waters Nation. Working on some technical issues on X. Come on over to YouTube for now. It usually reboots within 15 to 20 minutes here. Guns Picks, what's going on, brother?
Yeah, it looks like the link's not working on Twitter. That's why you got to pop over to YouTube, or you can click on my profile live. It should be able to work. But I digress. It's Sunday, baby. It's week 15, and man, do we have a bunch of good games here today. 425 slate is going to be absolutely elite, but we got plays all over the board here at the 1 o'clocks and the 425s, and we also have the Odds Fellow back with us on the show. Odds Fellow, how you doing this beautiful Sunday morning?
It's a little crisp and cold out there, but that means we got week 15 plays, playoff implications going down. And a little NBA Cup happening in the background for some of those hoops fans. So a lot of action this weekend. College football playoff coming up. It's a great time of the year. Get to spend it with family, friends, and betting on football. Nothing better.
Speaking of family and friends, we are here. We are now. It is NFL The Extra Points. We're going to work on this disruption, and we are about to disrupt the books on this Sunday. A lot of plays, full card, no bye weeks. We got 15 games today. A lot to discuss. First game we're going to discuss here, 1 o'clock, out of division, AFC football, Nissan Stadium in Nashville. 5-8 Bengals at 3-10 Titans. Not exactly a showcase of quality yet. An incredible buy low on the Bengals. The only three-way collab of the 1 o'clock card. We're taking Cincinnati at 4.5 through the week, 5.5 now. Guns Picks, open the conversation.
Yeah, you look at these two teams, you think, oh, this game is going to be a snooze fest, but not for bettors, because I think there's an opportunity to be taking the Cincinnati Bengals here. You look at Tennessee, their struggles over the season are noted basically on the offensive side of the ball. They're 30th in offensive scoring, 29th in offensive yards per play, 27th in red zone scoring percentage, and 29th in the league in touchdowns per game. But Cincinnati, the one thing they got going for them is their offense. They're absolutely elite this season. 6th in offensive scoring, 9th in offensive yards per game, 2nd in red zone scoring percentage, and they're 4th in touchdowns per game. For Cincinnati, this is just a great spot for them situationally. They've just performed well in these spots. They're 6-1 ATS on the road this season, 4-0 straight up in ATS as a road favorite as well. And then you got Cincinnati coming off that Monday Night Football game. And now on the road versus a non-divisional opponent. This situation has happened before. Last time it happened was in week 4, where they played Carolina after Monday Night Football, and they won that game by 10 as 4.5-point road favorite. So situationally, kind of works out here for Cincinnati. But on the Tennessee side, it is not the best spot for them here. They're 0-6 ATS at home this season. They're 2-7 ATS as a dog. The Cincinnati team struggled early in the season. And are 5-5 straight up since then, after that 0-3 start. But look who the teams that they got beat by here, folks. We're talking Baltimore twice, Philly, the Chargers, Pittsburgh, 1-4 ATS in those spots. Those are playoff teams here. But when they played below the teams below 500, it's a different story. They beat Carolina by 10. They beat the Giants by 10. They beat Cleveland by 7. They beat the Raiders by 17. They beat Dallas by 7. That is 5-0 ATS in those situations. Cincinnati's just a better team here, folks. They're going to get it done here against yet another team below 500. Give me Cincinnati at -4.5 as the play.
The Odds Fellow alignment, I believe.
A lot of it. I still have some stock on Cincinnati to make the playoffs. A bit of a long shot, probably because they need a bit of help. But this team is going to keep rolling and keep winning. And it really spells out to what Gunn said, a perfect little matchup here for them in spots they've thrived in. They're coming off a similar line in a cover on the road against Dallas last week. That game closed around 4.5, 5, albeit a little bit of a late botch special teams play helped them. But I'm all for the Dallas Cowboys tank this year. But they are 6-1 ATS on the road. Meanwhile, 1-5 ATS at home. So again, you want to find them in this road spot. That's been the trend this year. Tennessee 2-11 ATS overall, including 0-6 at home. And really, where the Bengals have struggled this year, it's been with that defense getting stops, right? And this is the perfect matchup because even the way the Cowboys were able to hang in the game with their talent on offense and their scheme on offense is not what you're going to get out of the Tennessee Titans. They've been outscored by 104 points over their past 9 games, which is the worst point differential in the league over that stretch. They average a league low 24.9 yards per possession, right? So they're not doing anything on offense, which is just going to allow, if the Bengals can get out and keep their offensive momentum going, that I don't think it's the type of game where Tennessee can stay in it and can keep up in that type of track meet. One little wrinkle here on Joe Burrow, also just spelling on how hot he's gone. He's thrown for at least 250 yards and 3 TDs in his last 5 games. So 5 straight games, the first quarterback to do that since Peyton Manning in 2012. So a little bit of a prop angle there if you want to look at some of his statistics. He did that against Dallas. He's done it 5 straight, and I think he does it today. And the Cincinnati Bengals, hoo-day, keep rolling.
Yeah, jumping off, you guys said a lot. I'll say just the rest of the details. And, you talk about the playoff picture. I think obviously Cincinnati does need quite a bit of help here. But I think when you really look at what's going on in the back end of this AFC picture here, Cincinnati against the point differential is just an incredible buy. 5-8 straight up, +2 in the point differential. There are teams in this league that are 3 games under 500. To name one, Dallas, -98. The Bengals are 100 points better than Dallas and have the exact same record. Just to give you a point of reference to how this team has not run well in terms of variance in small windows. And as Guns mentioned, pretty much all their losses have been to teams currently in the playoffs. They've been cleaning up these teams who are not in the playoffs. And I've said this week after week. I was joking with my guy Sean Green about this yesterday, and I was saying, you're not sharp apparently unless you're taking the Titans, because there are contrarian bettors who blindly bet the worst teams in the league just almost as a brag point of how contrarian they are. And if you really look at Tennessee, 0-7 ATS as an underdog outside of the division. Their only wins this year against Miami with Tyler Huntley, Drake May Patriots in overtime, and an anomaly game in Houston. And final point on this is actually a revenge game, interestingly enough. Cincinnati did take an early season loss last year in week 4 at Tennessee with emphasis, 27-3. That was Ryan Tannehill versus early season Burrow, who, of course, we know can't really perform before October 15th inexplicably, but it was an absolute massacre. Tennessee outgained them 400-211, but I think the coaching change makes a big difference. That was Mike Vrabel. It was Tannehill. It was grinder ball. This is Levis, a totally new regime, a loose regime, and books do like Cincinnati here. Since he was -3 in that game last year, took a margin loss. Now they open at 5. So let the number tell you the story. I have Cincinnati to win this game by 8 points on the average. A 3-way collab as we open the show, week 15, an opportunity to dominate. Next game, we're going to Jacksonville. Another game here, which is the beauty of sports betting, turning a disastrous game into a game you have a lot of interest in. 3-10 Jets, 1-6 on the road. One of the biggest surprises, if not number one surprise in the entire sport. I remember back in July and August, some of the guys in the media, I think some people we know, were betting the Jets to win the Super Bowl. Here they are in December, a coaching change later. The defense is in shambles, and Guns has noted that, buying the continuous efficient ATS Jacksonville Jaguars at +3.5.
You say what you want about the Jaguars. I know they're a 3-10 team, but this team has competed, and I'll tell you why in a second. But you have the Jets going against Jacksonville at Everbank Stadium in at 1:00 here today. And Jacksonville, you look at their numbers. They started 0-4, but they were 2-2 ATS with only one loss by more than a possession. 5 out of Jacksonville's 10 losses came to NFC opponents, though, however, if you look at them situationally. And only 2 of those losses were by more than a possession. They lost in London to Chicago by 19. That was as that was a transition from their first win of the year. Then they regressed in the second game going over to England. And then they lost to Detroit on the road, 14-point dogs by 46 points. But that, you know what? Everybody's losing to Detroit. So let's take that with a grain of salt there. Since starting 0-4 versus AFC opponents, though, they're 3-1 straight up in ATS. And their only loss was to Houston by 3 since then. And then you got to look at the Jets side. The Jets are just underperformed on the road. Minus 10-point differential on the road, 2-4 ATS in those spots. And they're also 1-3 ATS as a road favorite. Then you got to look at the Jets. They've also underperformed 3-6 ATS overall as a favorite. So this is the team, when they're favored, you need to fade them. Then Jacksonville, really single-digit dog this season, 7-1 ATS. This team is under the radar good in these type of situations. And I think when you look at the Jets, they've just lost hope. They've given up altogether. They're in regression mode. They're in reset mode. They're going to have a new coach next year. They're playing with an interim coach that, quite frankly, isn't very good. And, of course, I still think the Jacksonville Jaguars are playing for his coach. I think they're still motivated to go out there and win, and they've been playing competitively, I'll say, throughout this season, especially late on. So give me Jacksonville here, plus 3.5 as the play.
Yeah, this is an incredible dispersion in terms of the ATS efficiency. When I was handicapping this game, I mean, this is just insanity. The Jets are 3-10 straight up. Jacksonville's 3-10 straight up, same record. The Jets are 4-8-1 ATS. Jacksonville's 8-4-1 ATS. Like, how fascinating is that to have the same flat record and be the polar opposite, a dead mirror ATS? And Guns noting it, taking Jacksonville at plus 3.5. My official in this game, taking the over at 40.5. And when I was going through this yesterday, I honestly wasn't expecting to get to an official here, but I really like this over. And we took the over last week involving the Jets at Miami. And at that point, it was really a reflection to a Jets team gone so far awry, particularly defensively. This team has been touted now for a couple seasons as being an elite defense. They're uninspired. They don't have Saleh leading them. They're very injured, missing Sauce Gardner and a couple other pieces. And they are giving up sustainably here in the large sample back end of the season, 29 points per game on the road. They're 4-2 ATS versus the road over. And the only under came recently against Arizona in a game they scored 6 points, but gave up 31. And we don't expect the Jets to score 6 points today based on what we saw last week in Miami. This is Rodgers playing maybe his last year. I think he might come back next year just to do it right one last time, if possible, with a new coach. But they're really slinging the ball around the yard. And they've gotten into a flow. Devontae Adams looks a lot more comfortable. Garrett Wilson getting even more and more comfortable. And it's just going to be one of those games. We could sit here in the middle of the summer and we would say there's going to be 2 teams that are not even close to the playoff picture at the back end of the season in December. But they're out there competing, and they're not competing defensively like 1920 Leatherhead football. It's offensive, it's explosiveness. And you look at Jacksonville with Mac Jones. This is an incredible buy low. Last week, they went under on the road in the division at Tennessee, 10-6. Just an egregious outlier of a game. There were almost 600 yards in the game. There were so many possessions where they should have scored and didn't. Tennessee wasted, I believe, 150 yards driving the field only to go 4 and out in the red zone twice and just totally sucking the life out of the game. And the last time the Jags had a total outlier under, it was going back a few weeks at home against Minnesota. It It was a 12-7 Minnesota win and another egregious under. That was a game that had 6 turnovers, and Sam Darnold was throwing picks at the goal line like it was his job. After that game, which was a complete outlier, they gave up 52 at Detroit, and it went way over. And final point on this, the only home game this year Mac Jones has really been involved with significantly in recent history post-bye, it was the game that Trevor Lawrence got hurt at the end of the second quarter, and obviously I believe he's out for the year. Well, that game was 6-0 when Lawrence left, and it finished 23-20. So as soon as Mac Jones came in, basically at the end of the first half and then the entire second half, the game exploded with points. So this is 2 quarterbacks that are aging and backups, and a continuous conversation week to week here on NFL Extra Points. Backups are gunslingers because they're trying to prove themselves for another team and put tape on record. This game is going to be wide open. I see this game finishing somewhere in the high 40s. Take the over at 40.5, and let's dominate. Staying at 1 o'clock, more out-of-division AFC football. Miami traveling to Houston. Really interesting game here with Miami showing upward momentum end of the season with apparently a fully healthy Tua Tagovailoa, 6-7. And obviously the playoff picture potentially in their light. We're looking at the total here. We're not going over here. We're going under. Anthony Latino on this show for years now says, when they go low, we go lower. And talk to me under 47.5.
That's right. You'd think this thing would open up at 50, 51, 52. It did open a little bit higher. My one concern, the one counters, it's already creeped down a bit. I think it was around 47, 47.5, and you want to kind of be around that number, but it is still out there at 46. I do see some 45.5, so I think it's pushing even lower. We're not going to beat this up too much because Guns is going to get into it as well with a little bit of the two-way collab. But I do like it under 46, right? Like I said, this thing should open up higher with the talent that's on both sides of these offenses, the guys you continuously hear about, CJ Stroud, the next wave of quarterbacks in this league, Tua and the Miami offense finally getting right as they get going a little bit and he gets healthier. But it's really the perfect matchup to get a little bit of offensive inefficiency, despite the talent on both sides of the ball. So Miami's ranked dead last in rushing over the last 3 games, rushing yards per game. So that puts a ton of pressure on Tua, and over that span, I'll be right there, Tommy. Over that span, he's been averaging 40-plus passing attempts per game. Which, again, is just continuing to put pressure on him. But where that is going to run into a wall, and a brutal wall, is when he gets a brutal pass matchup against a very good Houston Texans secondary. These guys limit explosive plays. They've only given up, on 22% of their passing plays against them, 10-plus yards gains. So from an explosive play, a big play standpoint, which is a lot of what that Dolphins-led offense wants to do, they're going to get limited here. You flip it to the other side, and Houston's offensive unit, despite, again, the talent and a little bit of health issues early on, they've struggled dropping their net yard per play from 4.8, from 5.7 down to 4.8 yards per play that they had earlier in the year. And they're struggling, especially on those third down conversions. Miami's been a little bit better giving up points per game and touchdowns per game on the road. So another good spot for them to kind of lead to this thing overall. So I love it there at that 46 number. And Guns, I think you're coming with.
Yes.
Yeah, Guns.
Yeah.
Enlighten us, please.
Yeah, I'm with it on this one. I got 47.5 too. I know there's 46.5 there, like Odd said, and I still think it's a valid number here. When you look at Miami, they put up a lot of points as of late, but they've underperformed offensively on the road. They've only put up 16 points per game on the road, including putting up 23 and 20 and 17 on the road with Tua behind center. And then you just look at Miami's recent success, right? It's been reluctant because they've just done it versus weaker opponents. 30-plus points versus the Raiders, New England Patriots, and the Jets, who are ranked bottom of opponents scoring in the league. And then you got a Houston defense that is just really good against the pass. And Miami, that's what they want to do. They want to pass the ball a ton down the field. This is a team that is number 1 in opposing pass completion percentage, 5th in opposing passing yards per play, and 7th in opposing yards per game. And also you got to look at Houston, great pass rush on this team. They're 3rd in QB sack percentage. So defensively, it kind of their strength plays into what Miami wants to do offensively. So expect a little bit of a rock fight here. Then you got to look at Houston. They've just been an under team at home all season, 5-1 to the under at home. And then you got to look at Miami on the opposite side, on the road, same type of situation, 5-1 to the under in those spots. Now, Miami is a dog in this spot as well. When they are a dog this season, the under is 4-1 in those situations. And Houston, when they are a short favorite, unders are a trend as well. So a lot of these situations, I'm telling you, is just telling you under, 6-2 to the under as a favorite of less than 7 points. I just think this is going to be a little bit of a rock fight here. You have this Miami team that is just coming out, scoring too many points here, but they're going against lackluster opponents. They're going to have a little bit of a step up in class here going against the Texans here on the road. So, yeah, I love the under on this one. So I got it at 47.5. Like I said, take it 46.5. Take it 46. I think this is going to be a low-scoring affair here in NRG today. So give me the under 47.5 as a play.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't given the total much of a look here, but as you said, Houston under team at home. I do think you might see some points here early, and then it fades late and stays under, because we've seen this a few times with Houston this year. They come out and score, and then they just stop. I mean, go back to a game against Chicago early season, basically no points in the second half after an early flurry. Same thing within this division against Buffalo. Very similar line, short favorite, 23-20 under, but it did stay under late. And I do think, as you mentioned, 2 on the road, not scoring the ball. The ATS side in this game, I think, is very, very interesting. This is where both teams perform well. In my opinion, this is one of 2 games this week that is incredibly, incredibly difficult. And you don't want to buy, or you don't want to fade Houston here, because Houston and CJ Stroud has this noticeable polarization in his home career. He's very poor at home in the division, 1-5 ATS career, 6-1-1 ATS outside of the division at home. So he performs well here. Miami performs well here. Miami needs this game. This is a playoff game for Miami. 6-7, they cannot lose. So if you're fading Miami, you're fading peak desperation and a buy element. And if you're fading Houston, you're fading where CJ Stroud performs great and where Houston has been very poor recently at home ATS and should improve. So official play from the odds fellow and the gun, under 47.5. My next play, the buy hat is engaged in New Orleans. We're taking Washington at -7 midweek, -7.5 now. And this is very similar to the handicap with the Bengals. Washington performs great against non-playoff teams. Washington is also one of these unique environments where when they win, they cover, or vice versa, however you want to phrase that. Washington is 8-5 straight up, 8-5 ATS. Win and cover. So you ask yourself, are they going to lose to New Orleans today? I don't think so. If they win, they're probably going to cover. And I think it's going to come by margin. If you really look at the non-covers that Washington has put on record this year, at Tampa Bay in the opener, at Baltimore versus Pittsburgh, at Philadelphia, and a weird game against Dallas. Key point, 4 playoff teams and divisional opponents. If you flip it to the non-playoff portion of their calendar, 7-0 straight up and ATS, covering by an average of 20.5 points per game. And you guys have seen this all year. Blowout at Arizona, 42-14. Home blowout against Cleveland, 34-13. Home blowout against Carolina, 40-7. And most recently, a home blowout of Tennessee, 42-19. And you talk about line strength. If somebody had told us in the summertime that Jaden Daniels would be laying over a touchdown on the road against New Orleans, we would have said, you're insane. This kid is elite. He's mature. The coaching staff is connecting with this group, and this line is a blowout line. And final point on this, the Saints are in complete disarray. We think this is a lame duck coach. We're not entirely sure if Derek Carr will be back next year. He's now hurt. He broke his left hand late last week at MetLife Stadium. This is not Spencer Rattler back up. This is third string Jake Haener. I know the Gun loved Jake Haener for years, buying ATS sides with Fresno State, but this is professional football. And this year, when Derek Carr has not played, the Saints are 0-3 ATS, getting blown out across the board. Took a home loss against Tampa Bay, 51-27. Another home loss outside of the division, 33-10 against Denver. And a road blowout at the Chargers, 26-8. All lines right in this range. This is a blowout waiting to happen. And final point on this. When the Rams beat the Niners on Thursday night, the Rams right now are only a half game behind Washington for the final playoff spot in the NFC. Washington needs this game. This is not a look ahead. It's not a road trap. I've been saying this on X and in some group chats all week. There's a time and there's a place for sexy underdogs. It's usually before week 7 or 8. Late season football, you see massive competitive and motivational edges in the sport. I have almost all favorites this week. You guys who watch the show know we had mostly underdogs last week. We're not obsessed with favorites or dogs. It's motivational analysis and it's schedule analysis. I have Washington to win this game with authority by 24 points. Guns, could I talk you on to Washington?
I've already taken a little bit of a flyer on Washington. I took the 7 when I saw it drop to 7 at that one point earlier in the week, but I think this is a perfect spot for Washington. And I think it's even a better spot if you guys don't want to pay for the 7.5. Put that in a teaser leg. Get that down to 6. You go past the key numbers of 7-3. I think Washington is going to thump this team here today. And you said it best. It's like when you have that, when they put in the backup quarterback, or if it doesn't matter who it is there for the Saints, this team just underperforms in this spot. And you just have a Washington team that is going to be ready to go here today. And the only play to be taken on this one is Washington or pass. So yeah, I did take a little bit of a flyer earlier in the week to take that -7. But I would say it's a great teaser leg now now that it's over 7.5.
Yeah, and I know you haven't gotten to this game. I will say this. I don't think we need to tease this game. I think it's a blowout. But talk to us on the teaser angle for a second.
Yeah, the teaser angle, it's a great spot. Just given if you want to put it with 2 or 3 others, I wouldn't recommend, again, we talk about this a little bit on the show, but for those new to a teaser or joining for the first time, you're going to add 6 to 7 points there. Getting Washington down below that 7 and below that 3, 2 key numbers, like Guns mentioned, is the huge point. You could also tie that with Cincinnati a little bit. You get them right around a pick 'em then if you're just doing a 6-point tease. And another game that I like a little bit later that we'll talk about is the Pittsburgh-Philly matchup. And really depending on either way you feel there, but Pittsburgh could be a good teaser leg to get above 10 in what should be a close game. So, yeah, if you think anything funky is going to happen here in the matchup, that's one way to look at Washington. But I don't hate the alt lines and the blowout factor that Shark alluded to.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dominate. A couple more games at 1 o'clock here. No officials, but tons of information. It is NFL The Extra Points because we bring you the extra points you don't hear anywhere else. Chiefs at Browns. Very interesting game in Cleveland this afternoon. I know contrarians love the Browns. They moved the line from 6.5 to 4 from early week until now. Chiefs sitting here in a very unique spot. Chiefs look like they're about to lose a game every single week, and they pull through 0-7 last 7 ATS. So you ask yourself a question. Are they about to lose to the Browns because they're trending down ATS and it looks like they're about to lose? Or are they your classic ATS buy low in pro football, where you're just buying into the low side of a streak? I got some more comments on it. Guns, we were talking about this midweek, and we were saying how sick would it be to get to Kansas City on this spot, considering we've faded them basically every single week in recent history. But, Guns, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we hone in on the props here because of just another situation where you got Jameis Winston to get over his passing attempts here. And the sheer reason is you're playing a top 5 rush defense here with the Kansas City Chiefs, and the way you take advantage of them is in the passing game. They give up a lot of pass completions to their opponents week to week. And you just know what Jameis is going to want to do. He's going to want to air it out as much as he possibly can. I also like the Elijah Moore prop on his over on receiving yards in this game because there are some injury concerns on the wide receiver core or the receiving core for that matter. Njoku is going to be a game time decision. He's going to go try to warm up to see if he can play. So the tight end is going to be an issue in that one. Of course, Cedric Tillman not going to be playing this game at all. So it's going to give a little bit more targets to Elijah Moore. We took advantage of this similar type of spot when they played Denver on Monday Night Football, and Elijah Moore got over his receiving yards, I think, in the first or second quarter. So another type of situation where his I think it was set at 46.5. It's like 7 or 8 yards above his season average. So it's giving you a high indicator that we were probably looking at the over on his receiving yards. So the two props that I like in this game are going to be Jameis Winston over on his pass attempts and over on the Elijah Moore receiving yards.
I think the pass attempts is a great look. And I think a really interesting corollary here, which we do want to discuss. The Jameis Browns have very extreme polarization in their efficiency in the division versus outside of the division. 2-0 at home in the division, ATS and straight up. I mean, really impressive. Beating Baltimore outright, 29-24, and Pittsburgh outright as well, also by 5, 24-19. Go outside of the division, 0-3 ATS. And I think a really, really specific game here, which we can correlate this to. Home game against the Chargers in week 9, 27-10 loss. You see this line is a low total, 41.5. Jameis is coming off of a ridiculous week 13 Monday Night Football game in Denver, 41-32. And when you see that 73 points, and now it's 41.5, I think it speaks to an under, and I think it speaks to Kansas City having a real top defense, very similar to the Chargers traveling over here to Cleveland. But here's the great point about that under. That game against the Chargers, Cleveland only scored 10 points. Jameis had 46 pass attempts. So he was just chucking it all over the yard, but a very good Chargers defense bottled them up. And truthfully, as I was saying, this really could go one of two ways. Either Kansas City is cratering down or they're about to cover for the first time in 2 months. This is where Kansas City has been far better in recent history as a road favorite outside of the division. In fact, it's their best ATS environment of all environments in the last 2 years. You did see them cover this number at Atlanta early season, albeit close, 22-17 on a -4.5. And I think when you look at this calendar spot, we haven't talked about Pittsburgh yet or Baltimore. Houston is another one that fits into this conversation. 4 teams are playing 3 games in 11 days. They're playing this Sunday, next Saturday, and then on Christmas Day or Thursday, or no, not Thursday Night Football, on Christmas Day on Wednesday. So Sunday, Saturday, Wednesday. And when you think about if they're going to cover a game in that sequence, in my opinion, it would be the first one. The fatigue will be later. It will really crater down. I could see Kansas City getting beat outright in Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, but I think this is where they probably do bounce back. It's where Jameis doesn't perform well. I would lean here towards Kansas City if I had to play. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I actually thought they were going to break out a little bit last week. I know you guys were on the Chargers. You keep seeing these lines and you keep waiting for the moment to happen. For me, it's Kansas City or pass, but it is a funky line and another funky spot. I think the play ultimately, if you were going to have to pick a side or a total in this game, would be a lean towards the under. When you just look at it statistically, like Mahomes hasn't really been a great quarterback. He hasn't had to do a ton in some of these spots. Since week 8, the Chiefs offense, they've only averaged 4.9 yards per play. That's 29th in the league. They've had trouble getting longer runs and explosive plays going. I think the problem or the con in that, again, looking at it from all angles and why ultimately I'm not playing it pre-flop, is the Jameis factor. He's going to be slinging the ball because that's the way Cleveland has been playing it the last few games. He's had a ton of these pick sixes, right? Those short field, those turnovers leading to points directly, whether it's a pick six or a short field, is what really hurts sometimes a total that's that low and that tight in some of these spots. So it's one of these games I'm going to be watching, lean to the under and slightly in Kansas City.
Yeah, And, as I said with the Jacksonville game, you saw 10-6 last week. Now we're going over. This is really the polar opposite for Cleveland. 41-32, now under. And it really is just the insanity and the beauty of law of averages in pro football, how things can change so drastically week to week. And oftentimes people are blindsided by it, not waiting for it to happen. And final point on this game, just give you a little more credential to taking Kansas City here. If you actually look at their non-covers in recent history, home game against Denver, 16-14. Raiders, home game, 19-17. And Chargers, 19-17. So they have 3 specific 2-point outright wins in the division. But here's the key point on those games. The Broncos and the Chargers are actually incredibly upstart than the Chiefs, significantly. So those are not unimpressive results. And I think we're so accustomed to the Chiefs dominating in their division, it's very easy to say those are lackluster efforts. I mean, when you're beating the Denver and the Chargers, that's actually impressive right now, late season 2024. So I think they're actually much more in a bounce back spot. And they are 0-3 last 3 ATS on the road. Took a non-cover at Vegas, a loss at Buffalo, non-cover at Carolina. But Carolina's 5-0 ATS last 5. We had Buffalo to beat them. Buffalo's upstart. And the Raiders are a scrappy divisional opponent. So you could actually go game by game and give legitimate reasoning as to why they didn't cover those games. And this is precisely where you want to fade Jameis Winston. We're not on it officially, but truthfully, I could see Kansas City covering and the under. Guns, I think we got a question for you. You want to answer that one?
Yeah, talking about the first half on this one. He said, question, DraftKings first half -2.5 on a line that's -3.5. Usually that's a high indicator. You're looking at a first half swing. If you actually look at the Jets the past few weeks, they've actually really had decent first halves, either playing relatively close or having the lead in the first half. And they're going against the Jacksonville team that's ranked 27th in first half rankings. So that's probably giving the indicator. And when you look at the Jacksonville Jaguars, even like last week, they get behind, but they start to pick up momentum in late in the third and early in the fourth quarter. So I think if there's anything, there might be a little bit of a thread the needle action here in this game. Maybe take a little bit of an action on the first half here with the Jets, and then maybe take and if they do have the lead and you do cover that one, maybe hit them back up on the second half with the Jaguars. That's probably the way I'd look at that one. But that line, that's a strong line for the first half. That's giving you an indicator. You probably look at the Jets to have the lead in the first half, but maybe second half you got a look at the Jags.
Yeah, great stuff here. We'll stay at 1 o'clock and a couple more games here. Really intriguing stuff. And this is the beauty of late season football. We have so much information. We go through it in immense detail. Sometimes we don't get to an official, but we're giving you significant angles to where we think the game's going to flow. And a really interesting game here at 1 o'clock in the New York area, East Rutherford, MetLife Stadium. Ravens traveling across here to the Giants. Giants 2-11. 0-7 at home, straight up, off their first home cover of the season. We said it on this show last week. I can't fade the Giants because it's hard to get swept ATS in your home stadium. They did lose, but they did cover. However, things have changed this week. Drew Lock covered last week, and we had detailed this. Drew Lock last year with Seattle as a backup had actually been good at home ATS. And he continued that trend last week with New York. He's hurt. Here comes Tommy DeVito again. And Tommy DeVito actually performed well last year. We said a couple of weeks ago, we thought that might be fool's gold. We didn't really see Tommy DeVito being some sort of elite home quarterback. Actually, 2 outright wins last year against Green Bay and New England at MetLife Stadium late season. But he did get absolutely blown out this year by the Bucs. 30-6 in his only outcome. And that's why the line is so heavy. -16.5. I believe this is the biggest line of the entire season. And forget this matchup, just historical NFL football. These are not sexy dog lines. These are blowout lines. This is a league that is defined by tight games and competitive parity. When you see one team favored by this much, it speaks to a blowout. And the fact the total is 42.5 is that classic game where one team doesn't score. if I had to go any direction, I would go towards the Ravens. Guns, any thoughts?
Yeah, I really wanted to jump on the Ravens this week, and I just let the line surpass me. But this is the perfect Baltimore situational spot that we've taken advantage of. You got to remember, this team came off a loss to Philly in their previous game. Granted, they're coming off a bye week as well, so they're well rested and prepared for this one. But you have a Baltimore 7-1 ATS since 2023, covering by an average of 8.3 points per game in these situations. And I just correlate this back to when if you just look at how the Giants have performed at home, it's way worse than they do on the road. I think they only average like 11 points per game at home this season, so it's been bad for MetLife every time they go and play there. And Tommy DeVito, we've already seen him play, and we saw what happened against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Tampa Bay Bucks doesn't have the greatest defense in the world, but they only put up 7 points, but they gave up 30. So that gives you everything that you need to know with this one. And I think if I check my records correctly, yeah, I think the Ravens are a better team than Tampa Bay Bucks. So, yeah, I think that's the only spot to be taken on this one is Baltimore. I know it's a big line, guys, and I'm not going to be taking it personally, but the only way to go is to go that way. And I think the reason why the line is so big as well, as Odds and I were talking before the show, is they're just the books are trying to protect themselves from teasers. It's basically just teaser protection is why it's moved so much. This thing opened at 12. And now it's creeping up to 17 now. It just will not stop till kickoff. So, yeah, the only way I take this one is Baltimore pass.
Yeah. Anything on this one?
No, just too much red zone efficiency versus inefficiency too, which I think leads to that 30-6 game, right? It was a similar story. Ravens scored a touchdown, a league high 75% of the red zone possessions. Giants are all the way the other way, 41.7. They're 15 of 36. So even if they are driving the field a little bit, it could end up trading field goals or going for it on fourth down. So it could spread out that margin. So it's Baltimore. I think you actually see teams more often than not on some of these blowout type big lines actually do get there and cover. So I think Baltimore would be the sharp side, just a tough one to lay.
Yeah. And Gunn said it. Baltimore off a loss, 7-1 ATS last 8. And just look at Lamar Jackson. A couple quotes in the media this week talking about being super locked in. We're not overlooking this game. We need this game, and that really is a crucial point here. Baltimore has kind of let this get away from them a little bit. I think people thought this team was absolutely the class of the AFC North. I mean, they're 2 full games behind Pittsburgh, and they're really kind of hovering at the back end of the playoff picture, tied right now with the Chargers and the Broncos. Like, they cannot drop games. Not only that, after this week, they do play Pittsburgh on Saturday afternoon next week. So that's not a mortal lock, although I'm sure we'll probably get to Baltimore next week in a revenge game against Pittsburgh. I actually love that spot. But the point stands. This is not, as I said before, like week 4 couple years ago where they're going to go into MetLife against a backup quarterback and just coast. And we saw them do it this year at home. They lost to Gardner Minshew in week 2 or week 3. So they're capable of dropping terrible games on record. But again, early season dogs are totally, utterly different. When you get teams that care, that are at this much of a quality uptick point, it speaks to a blowout. And I actually misspoke. That game a couple weeks ago was 30-7, not 30-6 against Tampa Bay. But truthfully, I think we could see a very similar score sheet here today. I think when you see a 42.5 and a 16.5 line, it speaks right there. 30-7, 23-point win under, 31-7, 34-7, just hitting 40, 41, 41.5, something like that. So I think high advisory point, take the Ravens. And I also think the Ravens historically are great in the first half in these spots. And if you look at what they've done, sometimes they come out and just hammer teams, and then they let off. And the only road game they played in this division this year at Dallas, they did come out and hammer Dallas in the first half. And I'm sure the line is all over it. Our guy Chris was asking about the other game in terms of the line split. I don't have it in front of me, but I would imagine Baltimore is laying like 9.5 or 10.
It's 9.5. I looked on the first half. It's 9.5.
Yeah, so that's a good line. I mean, that's a heavy split. It's also a good number to get it under 10, so you're not pushing at 10 or even worse, having a 10-point win-lose at 10.5, which we've seen before too. So, again, a lot of conversation. We're not dropping 30 officials here, but this is Baltimore early. Baltimore, Guns, talk to me.
No, I think the team total over is a good look too. It's set right on their average, so it was like 29.5 on this one. Also, I thought the team total for the Giants was kind of low. If you can get it at 13, I don't know. I know they average right around 20. That's giving you an indicator there that you're probably looking at a blowout from from the Baltimore Ravens here today. But I wouldn't, if you want to take a stab on the team total over for the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, I think they're going to come out swinging here today, coming off the bye, coming off that loss. They're going to want out here and just absolutely thump a team like the New York Giants today.
Yeah, and just one more point on this. Speaking of early season garbage games from the Ravens, the last time these teams played, actually 2 years ago in October, Baltimore lost outright in this stadium to the Daniel Jones Giants, 24-20. But it was classic what we just said. Baltimore was up 20-10 early fourth quarter and got outscored 14-0 in the last half of the quarter and dominated the game. 406 yards to only 238 for the Giants. So you talk about this. It also goes on that point with Lamar Jackson against the NFC. These teams don't know how to scheme for him. And when you see a loss like that, you get a revenge game, and you get a game they dominated and melted. It's all over Baltimore here tonight. I actually had written down here, Baltimore's average to win by 23 points here. Take Baltimore, and let's dominate. Last game at 1 o'clock, Fox Sports. We got Cowboys at Panthers. Another one we did not necessarily expect to be this direction late season. I think early season we were looking at the Cowboys to be at least a wild card, if not a divisional playoff team. Here they are, 5-8, nothing to play for theoretically. Dak is hurt for the year. Cooper Rush is in. Panthers are favored for the first time since late 2022, I believe. I have some thoughts on this. We always say this. Ants the fan. What's going on with the Cowboys?
Fade them. Tank. That's what I want them to do. But no, I think another situation where a line is telling you a lot, right? This is a big story. It snaps a 33-game streak where the Panthers have been underdogs, so not favored in this league. So now that leaves the Pats, I think, 14 games in a row as the longest active streak in the NFL. So, Guns will have to deal with that in the future. But he's got Drake May to be happy about. For me, I think it's a great look for Carolina. I like the over here, actually. I think both of these teams can get a little track meaty when you look at them points per game versus points allowed. They're both scoring in the high teens to low 20s, but they're giving up the Cowboys over 30 at 31 and the Panthers at 29.8. So that's or 28.2 for the Cowboys, and the Panthers at 29.8. They are good for 31st and 32nd in the NFL in terms of points allowed per game. So look for this thing to get going. I would lean Carolina in the over.
Yeah, I think when you see Carolina favored here, it's obviously telling you immense strength. The line has gotten a little far off where we had it early week. It was at -1 on Monday or Tuesday. Now it's, I believe, -3
in some spots. Yeah.
Let me see what we have here, actually.
2.5, 3, I think, across the board.
Yeah, it's 2.5s and 3s right now.
Yeah, and even the 2.5s are heavily juiced. So it's basically 3 at a neutral price point. Heavy line. Honestly, I don't know, Guns. We were talking about this early week. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I just couldn't get there. You got to see this situationally. There's really no data as far as how Carolina performs as a favorite because they're never a favorite in any sort of game. So seeing them here sitting as the favorite here at home gives you some pause as far as like how's this team going to perform knowing that they're not the dog walking into this role. Rather, Dallas is here on the road. But I think odds had a valid point here on the over. When you look at the home situation there for Carolina, they've just really been putting up some points. They put up 23 versus New Orleans, 27 versus Kansas City, 23 versus Tampa. And then on the same type of split, there's just high scoring affairs here with Dallas on the road. They actually put up 25 points per game on the road versus 17 points per game at home. So maybe there's some validity as far as the over is concerned here. And I think they've just been in an awakening here with Bryce Young ever since he got benched and had to sit for a few weeks. Then he went back into the game has really performed very well as the quarterback, really methodically moving the ball down the field. Their passing's gotten better. The offensive production's gotten better. They've been scoring points against some good defenses. And I think it's another one of those situations where we're looking at a high total game here in Charlotte. So, yeah, I would lean towards the over, but no official plays for me on this game.
Yeah, I think the over is actually a great look. It's kind of like what I was saying with the the Mac Jones situation. I just feel like this is a gunslinger type of game. It's Cooper Rush trying to prove himself at all points in time. And, of course, Bryce Young bouncing back incredibly well off that benching early season. Part of the reason I couldn't get to Carolina here is that Cooper Rush conversation. He is 3-1 ATS road in his career. And the last time he took a non-cover at home and went on the road, Dallas got blown out by Houston, 34-10 at Jerry World. They went on the road and beat Washington outright, 34-26 at plus 10.5. So it's not so much the line strength for Carolina here. It's Dallas on the road. And I've seen a lot of narratives this week. Micah Parsons looked like he was, distraught, pouting, whatever, walked off the field. CeeDee Lamb all season has had awful body language. That doesn't change the fact that Cooper Rush is just grinding for his career. And it's not so much what Micah Parsons thinks about this game today. This is Cooper Rush and these guys, a lot of guys that truthfully are not big name players right now in the Dallas offense. Rico Dowdle talking about getting to 1,000 yards this year. Kavontae Turpin, not a guy that people were talking about. These are guys that are out there to prove something. They're not out there to tank. They're not out there crying. Like the superstars are crying. The rest of the guys are ready to go. And, we were talking about this, but the last time Carolina was favored was week 15, 2022. It was actually the same line. They were minus 2.5 against Mitchell Trubisky Steelers team a couple years ago. And they did lose outright on minus 2.5 at home outside of the division, 24-16. And, we're talking about, buying the Kansas City 0-7 sample. When you see Carolina 5-0 ATS last 5, I think they might be too hot here. I really do. And I was saying to Guns early week in a text message conversation, when you really look at where they are here in the last 10, this is where it's no longer a buy low. 0-5 previous 5, now 5-0 last 5. So 5-5 last 10. Now they're on the average. They're not a buy low. And this is where it could be well adjusted. It is strong, but it also could be well adjusted. So a lot of counter angles here. Be careful with this game, guys. This is a tough game at this point. Segueing to 4 o'clock. No 4:05 games this week. Only 4:25. 5 of them to be exact, because we're getting a full card here in this week 15. We hope you guys are finding the link on X and YouTube. Come on over, hang out with us. A great conversation has ensued here on December the 15th. Let's talk some more officials. Big time stuff here. Going to the gun first. A sneaky good game developing in Denver today. 6-7 Colts, 8-5 Broncos. Looking at the over 44.
Yeah, I think there's going to be two. You have two teams coming off a bye here going into this spot, and I think there's a good opportunity to be taking a over in this game. But when we break down this game, really, Denver, one of the best rush defenses in the league. We can say that. They're third in opposing rush yards per carry, 6th in opposing yards per game, 1st in opposing touchdowns per game. But this is just going to make this team a little bit more one-dimensional in the Indianapolis Colts, passing the ball rather than running it. Then Indianapolis, they'll have to pass the ball a lot in this game because defense, like I said, Denver's defense ranked 27th in opposing pass play percentage, 29th in opposing pass attempts per game. So a lot of teams try to pass on Denver. So you're going to see a lot of it through the air here with Richardson. And then Denver has found some scoring as of late, especially at home. They put up 27 points per game at home overall this year. And in their last 4 games, they put up 31.4 points per game. So this is a team, when they're at home, they put up some points. And then on the Indianapolis situation versus AFC opponents outside the division, the over is 4-1 in those spots. And then all of Indy's unders this season have either come inside the division versus non-conference opponents. And the only one that's excluded is Miami. And guess what Miami didn't have in that game? Tua. Tua did not play in that game, so that's why it was a low-scoring affair there when they played Miami. But Denver 4-1 to the over in the last 5 home games, and this is the second highest total that Denver has had all season at home. Denver is also 5-1 to the over when they are a favorite this year. So you have both teams coming off a bye, well rested, well prepared for this one. I expect a high-scoring game here in Mile High. So give me the Indianapolis-Denver over 44 as the play.
Yeah, Ant, any thoughts on this one?
No, nothing major. This is a game I really want to sit back and look at and probably attack live from my angle if I can get some time and I'm sitting watching these games. We always talk about this. I think live betting in a lot of these markets moves very quickly. If you're able to sit and do both and see it, this is a game where I think you're going to get a little bit of back and forth, which feeds into Guns' overplay. So that's my angle for today. This is what I'm excited about.
Yeah, this game, in my opinion, could go one of two ways, and I think it really has angles to both. Denver this year is 6-0 ATS as a favorite, and the Lions just keep getting stronger. But if you look at their last game against Cleveland, they needed 2 pick-sixes to cover the game. So it's like we just said with Carolina becoming adjusted. I think the books have caught on to Denver, and they might have it sharpened up significantly. And I think speaking on the Indianapolis side here as well, Indianapolis' last 5 road games were decided by 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, 8 points, 1 point, and 1 point. So Indianapolis on the road is like right around a field goal basically every game. I like the over. Richardson scoring the ball recently. I do think it's tough to buy Indy here from the standpoint that Richardson is 3-0 ATS on the road this year outside of the division, which I think to a certain degree is a little bit funky, covering at New England and the Jets. Obviously, bottom feeders within the AFC East. But I think this line is on Denver. This is where Indianapolis, again, we talked about it with Miami. This is really their Super Bowl game here. They can't lose. They're 6-7. It's the last game. They're out of the playoffs if they miss this. 1 point on Indy versus Miami. Miami actually with the same record has a plus point differential when Tua plays. And Indy is 6-7 minus 31. I think Indy's too hot. Denver's too hot. Tough game here. But for the gun, take the over at 44. Big time stuff here. 425 in Philadelphia. In season, in state game. Steelers at Eagles. And a game that we are really looking forward to here on this Sunday. I think this is really an interesting conversation. 10-3 Steelers, 11-2 Eagles. Ant's got an official. We have comments. Ant on the Steelers at plus 5.5.
We talked about it. We're taking a lot of probably a lot of favorites today. We're talking about leans on a lot of favorites. This is a dog, but maybe it's a square public dog, and I'm okay with that because I just think 5.5 is too much. It's too many, right? I'm going to rattle off a bunch of statistics that you've all heard 1,000 times about Mike Tomlin, but I do think this is a tough game and a tight game, and one that I have graded a little bit closer to that 2.5, 3.5 mark. So that means I have value here that I'm going to take. So Guns told me the Steelers haven't won in Philly since the 1960s. He can give me the exact date. I think it was 65, right?
65, yeah.
65. I don't give a shit. They're getting the win today. The teams are very evenly ranked across the board. When you look at it statistically, though, especially as of late, Philly's jumped out in 2 key categories. Their offensive yards per play, they're ranked 12th versus 22nd for the Steelers, and then defensive yards per play. I think this is the underrated spot about Philly, and I'll give them all the credit in the world here. First in that category on defense versus 8th for the Steelers. So it could lead to a Philly win outright. Yeah, right? Sure. But I'm talking about 5.5 points here. So let's get into the Tomlin stuff. At 3.5 points, so 3+, given the Steelers' makeup under this Mike Tomlin regime, they are 28-16 against the spread. That's a 63.6%, almost 64% cover rate. When that number jumps to 4+ points, they cover it 65.5% of the time. This year, odds makers seems like they can't figure out Pittsburgh at all, right? So that obviously could lead to a little bit of regression. Maybe it starts coming down to earth, but they're 10-3 against the spread this year, including 5-0 against the spread as underdogs this season. They've won all 5 of those games outright, right? So that might even tell you here in that case, the counter there to maybe sprinkle a little bit on the money line. But for me, the really key comes down to, right, because it's those trends, it's those statistics, it's where I think the game is going to land, but it's also the matchup. This features the return of Alex Highsmith on defense, which I think is a really important part for Pittsburgh. When he's on the field, they've generated a pressure rate of 39%, which would rank second in the NFL if you blew that out over the course of the season. Hurts under pressure like a lot of quarterbacks, right? But not all, right? Some thrive against the blitz, some thrive under pressure and getting out a little bit more mobile. But for Hurts, he hasn't been good. He's averaging just 5.1 yards per attempt when he's under that pressure. So I think you're going to get the perfect storm here of if they do want to hand the ball off to Saquon, he's running into the 4th ranked rushing defense based on opponent rushing yards per game. The Steelers are giving up 91.5 yards per game, including 83 on the road, right, which is obviously this spot. So hopefully that leads to them abandoning that run a little bit, getting away from Saquon, which I don't think the Philly offense should do, forcing the ball offensively to try to regurgitate or kind of reinvigorate a passing attack that they haven't been able to get going. I'm all for the forcing the ball downfield to A.J. Brown to deal with his commentary that's been in the media lately, to try to get that passing offense going, because I think that just plays exactly into what Pittsburgh wants to do. They want to put the ball in Jalen Hurts' hand. They want to force him to beat them, and I think that's going to lead to a game, again, that's tight. So Pittsburgh plus 5.5 all day, one of my favorite plays of the year.
Really? One of your favorite plays of the year?
Wow.
I'm back.
Out of all of them?
All of them.
Wow.
Stamp.
Well, that is, I mean, that's, I love it. I don't know if I'm convinced just yet, though. Guns, what do you think?
I'm not convinced at all. Just what I said. They don't win in Philly. It's not 0-10 in Philadelphia and 0-3 ATS straight up with Tomlin as the coach. Okay, it's like the only play I would take on this one is Philly. I'm not taking it on the sheer fact that Philly have just really played terrible at home this year, and I still don't trust it. They're coming off that bad game against Carolina, which they still won the game. I think people in Philly need to calm down and cool their jets a little bit. You're winning games. Doesn't matter how you're winning them. I think everybody just assumes they should be winning by 100 in every single game that they play. But you played a very hot Carolina team that was going into that spot, and you came out with a victory, even though you didn't really throw the ball well. But in this situation, they're going to have to throw the ball versus Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh has one of the top rush defenses in the league. But you've seen what happens to Philly in their last 2 games. They only passed for 112 yards against Baltimore, and who's one of the worst pass defenses in the league. And then against Carolina, another pass defense that I think is lackluster. You only put up 83 passing yards. So they're going to have to figure out the passing issues there in Philly. This is a team that is just kind of ice cold on the offensive side. The last 2 games back to back, haven't scored over, actually put up more than 300 yards of total offense in the last 2 games after putting up 400 versus the Rams and 400 versus the Commanders. This is just a game that I'm just not going to be touching on this one. I think that 5.5 is just a weird line. I mean, just consider the fact that in a similar situation, they played Jacksonville a couple of weeks. That line was 7.5. You're telling me that this team is 2 points better than the Jacksonville Jaguars? Pittsburgh? I don't know, man. That line's giving me kind of a strong lean towards the Philly side. I'm not taking this game, but like I said, 1965 is last time that Pittsburgh Steelers have won in Philly.
They're due.
Yeah.
Just so are the Washington Generals to the Harlem Globetrotters, okay? Everybody's due.
No, I agree. I mean, I had said this to Ant in our chat earlier. I do lean towards Philly as well, and it's exactly what you said, Guns. Why is Philadelphia laying 5.5 to the Steelers? That is so strong. And if you look at what Pittsburgh has been doing here since Russell Wilson became the quarterback, they beat the Jets, they beat the Giants, they beat Washington. This is where I think it's just a really tough spot for Pittsburgh here. Last 4 weeks, win against Baltimore, short week snow game, Thursday Night Football, Cleveland, win against Cincinnati, win against Cleveland. Next week at Baltimore, 4 consecutive divisional games. Now you got to go to Philly, and then you get another one against Baltimore next week on a short week. This is a terrible spot for Pittsburgh. And if you look at Philadelphia here, Gunn said it. I think, Ant, you said it as well. Philadelphia is 3-10-1 ATS, last 14 at home. Horrible. However, they were 9-1 ATS at home before that. And we always talk about this. Somehow it always gets back to 50-50. What is 9-1 plus 3-10-1? 12-11-1 ATS, last 24 at home. They were way too hot. Now they're way too cold. Where do you find them? Right on the average, as always. But here's the point. Once you get back to the average off a significant low point, a team like Philadelphia should start more upward movement, in my opinion. And if you look at what Philadelphia has done in recent history, I think they're actually far more impressive than Pittsburgh. They blew out the Rams on the road by 17. Then they beat Baltimore on the road. Prior to that, they covered against Washington. They blew out Cincinnati on the road. I just lean towards Philadelphia. Obviously, it's great conversation here. And one final point on it, you're talking about A.J. Brown. This, to me, was pretty uncanny. The last time Pittsburgh played in Philadelphia, Week 8, October 30th, 2022. So you talk about Brown not catching the ball, supposedly a disrupted environment here. Jalen Hurts can't throw the ball, whatever. You want to get comfortable? Here comes Mike Tomlin and the Pittsburgh defense. Very similar roster to 2 years ago. Jalen Hurts in that game, 35-13 Philadelphia. 4 touchdown passes. 3 touchdowns to A.J. Brown. 27 yards, 29 yards, and 39 yards. That was the best game of A.J. Brown's career. And that was the best passing game of Jalen Hurts' career. I think they're going to get comfortable here today. I saw A.J. Brown anytime touchdown around plus 250, 2 touchdowns plus 850. I think they're going to go off in the pass game today. I think A.J. Brown catches 2 touchdowns. I might sprinkle a quarter unit on 2 touchdowns plus 850. Ant said it's his favorite play. The three-way collab, or the three-way guys here, we love him. We're shredding his play. We love him anyway. Best of luck, and let's dominate. Staying at 425, a massive, massive game at Detroit here. Bills at Lions, Ford Field, CBS. A collaboration between myself and the Gun. Gun's on the money line. I have the spread. It is a big-time play. Guns, talk to me.
Yeah, I just wanted to take him for the win, and I thought I had a pretty decent line that I got early in the week at minus 130 for Detroit. Detroit, third home game in a row. They're on an 11-game win streak. This team just thumping along. They're going against a Buffalo team that snapped their 7-game win streak last week on a loss to the Rams. So maybe this team is starting to regress a little bit coming into the back half of the season. Then you have Detroit, a team that just utilized the run to the best of their abilities. 5th in rush play percentage, 8th in rushing yards per game, 3rd in rushing attempts per game, and they're 4th in rushing yards per game. So this is a run-oriented team, and if there's any vulnerability in the Buffalo defense, it's the run game. 26th in opponent yards per carry, and 19th in opposing yards per game given up to their opponents. Then the offense is run-oriented as well for the Buffalo side. They're 9th in rushing attempts per game and 10th in rushing yards per carry, but they're going against a defense for the Detroit Lions that is one of the toughest against the run this season. They're 5th in opposing yards per game given up to opponents, and they're number 1 in rush attempts per game. So teams try to get a little bit top-heavy and pass the ball a lot versus Detroit. Situationally, Buffalo just in a bad spot. Second leg of a road trip off a loss, a road dog versus non-divisional opponents with a divisional opponent on deck. This has happened before early in the season where the outcome was a 23-20 loss to Houston. So I think we're going to be seeing something similar here in this spot. And then Detroit has just outperformed versus AFC opponents all season long, especially at home, outscoring them 104-20. But Detroit versus AFC opponents is 3-1 ATS with a plus 26 point differential. Yes, I know a lot of these teams are below 500 teams, but it's still a statistic nonetheless. But Detroit just should show out here as a short favorite versus this Buffalo team that has just underperformed situationally off a loss and on the road one more time. 0-2 straight up as a dog versus non-divisional opponents. This year, the Buffalo Bills they don't perform well as a dog. So give me Detroit here. Money line, minus 130 as the play.
Yeah, collaboration official. I'm on minus 1.5. Gunn said most of it. It really is that key point. People are buying Buffalo just because of the constant obsession with the bounce back. And this is not where they bounce back. It's road, it's fatigue. And one noteworthy thing that I picked up on listening to reports midweek, Buffalo had to cancel their practice on Thursday. 30 inches of snow in the Buffalo area. They had to do a Zoom call. So you think about traveling back from LA. You probably have Monday off, probably Tuesday, kind of a get what you need day. They're really trying to recover. They're playing the best offense in the league an incredibly jacked up, perpetually energized Dan Campbell Lions, and then you miss a full day of practice in terms of game planning and just figuring out what's going on, that is really brutal. I mean, this is more than just missing a practice. Like, of all the weeks to miss a practice, this is absolutely terrible. And Detroit here is actually a really nice buy spot. Guns mentioned it. I'll jump off it for a second here. Detroit's coming off of 2 non-covers in a row, both in the division, both at home, Green Bay and Chicago. They did the exact same thing last year. Back-to-back games at home, Green Bay and Chicago, didn't cover either of them. What did they do in the game after that? They went on the road outside of the division against New Orleans on a similar line, -3, and they covered the spread in a high-scoring game. And speaking of high-scoring games, this has the makings of a 70-point game, in my opinion. And one corollary to this, last year, Buffalo played a road game at Philadelphia. Philadelphia last year was trending right in the same direction as Detroit, 1 seed in the NFC. Same line, Philadelphia -2.5. Philadelphia won the game in overtime, 37-34. I think it's going to be a classic. I don't love fading the Bills. I like the Bills. We've had the hat on before. We've completely championed Josh Allen. This is where the Lions will perform well. And final point on this, Detroit is 1-4 ATS, last 5 at home in the division. Outside of the division, last 16 at home, 12-4 ATS. Detroit has that quality. They'll be pissed off. They just played 2 lackluster games in a row. It is a collaboration play. Detroit on the money line and -1.5. Ant, can we get you there?
Let me think about it. We'll work through it today. But one key point here and why I do kind of lean and go with you guys too on it, just think about where these teams are in the standings. Buffalo's 10-3. The next best team in that division is Miami at 6-7. They can't get caught, right? It is what it is. They might be locked into a playoff spot unless some different things break out in front of them, which probably isn't going to happen. Detroit, meanwhile, is clinging to the number 1 seed. They're also clinging to the division as part of that because Minnesota's looming at 11-2. It's crazy when you look at the standings and what that means. I think that's going to be a huge motivational factor and a real thing for Dan Campbell and the way he's going to be able to motivate this team throughout the last 3-4 weeks of the season.
What's that stat about the NFC North teams are 28-3 outside the division?
Yeah,
I mean, they only lose to each other.
11-2, 9-4, and I would say Chicago outside of that Niners game are relatively
very strong
4-9. You know, very strong.
Yeah, speaking of competitive gaps in the division, my next play, switching hats here, over an hour into the broadcast, the buy hat is engaged. We're taking the Chargers at home -2.5. And this is a competitive edge for the AFC West against the NFC South. And you look at where Tampa Bay comes into this game, 4-1 ATS last 5, 3-0 straight up last 3. I was watching TV midweek, and people were saying, Tampa Bay's hot. They've caught wind. I said to Guns, do these people even take 1 second to look at who they played? The Giants, Carolina, and Las Vegas. Those are 3 of the worst teams in the league. Combined record, 7-32. How could you be impressed by a 3-game winning streak? I feel like the JV All-Stars go 3-0 in that sample. And you look at where the Chargers are coming into this game, they're coming off an outright loss. A very representative cover at Kansas City last weekend on Sunday Night Football. The Chargers are 3-0 this year, ATS, off of an outright loss. They're also 8-0 ATS this year as an opening line favorite, and they're 3-0 ATS this year against the NFC South. Hammered Carolina on the road 26-3, hammered New Orleans at home 26-8, and covered at Atlanta 17-13. Also a nice spot to fade Tampa Bay, 2-0 ATS last 2 against this division. At Kansas City, primetime week 9, overtime non-cover plus 8.5, lost by 6. Key point there, Kansas City not performing well at home ATS. Chargers polar opposite of Kansas City in this spot. And a blowout last week against Las Vegas, 28-13. Las Vegas 2-11, third-string quarterback. I'm not impressed. Love this play. And throwing it to the gun, I forget even the guy's name. Stone Smart? Is that who we're looking at?
Yeah.
Stone Smart. I mean, you guys, these names these guys have are just legendary from like a comedic standpoint, but no comedy here. The gun buying Stone Smart over in the receiving yards market at 48.5, I believe.
No, it's actually 29.5 on that one.
Maybe that's some beautiful forecasting where we're going here.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I like Stone Smart as the tight end here. If you don't know who he is, he's a backup tight end. And he's Will Dissly, not going to be playing in this game. So he's going to step in. He stepped into the role very well last week. 3 targets, 3 catches, 54 receiving yards. And he's got a 29.5 receiving total. This guy's only put up 96 receiving yards all year. But you got to look at how this Tampa team defends against the tight end this year. They're ranked 27th. In the league as far as defensive DVOA is concerned against tight ends, and they give up the 3rd most yards to tight ends overall. And I think there's only 2 teams that are worse. It's the Raiders and the Chiefs. So this is going to be another one of those big passing games here for the Chargers. Going against the Tampa team defensively is susceptible against the pass. And they're going to want to pass the ball too. Tampa, that's what they do. They pass the ball a lot. So it's going to be one of those high-flying games, and I think the tight end's going to get involved, knowing that their top, Lad McConkey, while he is going to give it a go today, I don't know what his health is going to be like, but I think it's going to be an opportunity to take advantage of the tight end here with Stone Smart here and over on his receiving yards at 29.5. Also, I like the Chargers here. I got it at -3, -105. You just situationally, it hits every single type of trend that you want. 4-0 ATS is a home favorite. 7-1 ATS is a favorite overall. 3-0 ATS versus the NFC South. 3-1 ATS off a loss. And then Tampa is just underperformed as a dog. 1-3 ATS as a dog of less than 6 points is telling you everything you need to know on that one. And Shark said it before. Who have they beaten in their 3 straight? The Giants, the Carolina in overtime, the Raiders. I mean, no, this isn't a hot team here, folks. We're going to be taking the Chargers here at -3, -105. That's the only way to go with this one, but stronger on the Stone Smart. Shout out ODU for that one on 29.5 receiving yards.
Absolutely love it. Week 15, ODU backup tight end. Take it officially. And I have a prop in this game as well. On the same idea, Justin Herbert over passing yards, 241.5. And when you really look at what's going on here, I was looking at this number and I thought to myself, wow, over 241.5. What's going on in this game? This is the Chargers, Jim Harbaugh, run and defense. This is going to be a different type of game. This is where Tampa Bay does not defend the pass at all. 30th in passing yards against, bottom 3 in the league. The last time the Chargers faced a team in this range against the pass, it was Cincinnati going back to November 17th, and he did have 17 completions for 297 yards in that game. Since then, he has gone under 218, 147, and 213. Similar to what we said about Jalen Hurts, although not as egregious with Justin Herbert. Off 3 lower ones, now the line has moved up significantly. It speaks to a massive uptick in passing yards here. And a couple other noteworthy overs prior to that. Home game against this division, over against New Orleans, 279, and against the NFC on the road at Arizona, over 349. They will open up. This game will be explosive. This is where Baker fits that model of gunslinger as well. It's not going to be your classic Harbaugh 17-13 slowdown game here. Expect a lot of passing yards from Herbert and an over in the backup tight end market per the prop gun on week 15. 3 officials, 1 game. Chargers -2.5. Stone Smart over receiving yards 29.5, and Herbert passing yards over 241.5. Staying at 4 o'clock. Last game on the card here at 4:25. Pats at Cardinals. Interesting game here. Kyler Murray last week played one of the worst football games I have ever watched. And Ant said his favorite play of the year is Pittsburgh. I'll say this. My least favorite game of the year was last week with Kyler Murray. No exaggeration. Throws a beautiful touchdown pass on the first series, like a 50-yard pass. Clearly starts to think he's just going to shred the Seahawks. Starts throwing these horrendous passes into double coverage. Gives back 17 points in the first quarter alone to lose the game 30-18. I have a sneaky feeling this is where Kyler's going to bounce back. The minute he looks terrible, he'll all of a sudden come back this week against a young Pats defense and throw for 3 touchdowns. Guns, you got the hat on. You said it to us midweek. He's either awful or amazing. Is this where Kyler is bouncing back to amazing this week?
Who knows? I don't know with this kid. It's like you never know what Kyler's going to show up. I say he's bipolar. I was like, he either looks like a top 5 quarterback or he looks like Nate Peterman. I was like, I don't know which one it is every single week with this guy. But I mean, if there's anything, you're going against a Pats defense that you can kind of take advantage of them left and right. But I mean, you're seeing them favored here at home. Was it -5.5, -6? I honestly just passed on this game completely. I didn't even look into it. It was on the sheer fact that maybe I'm a little bit, tough pill to swallow last week when you thought you had a good cap, but take the Cardinals. And then they lose 30-18 on you. They've lost 3 straight. They lost a close win in Minnesota on the road. Then they lost to Seattle twice. Now you're going against an AFC team. We've seen what they do against the AFC, especially the AFC East. They beat the Jets 31-6. They beat Miami 28-27. So they're capable of showing up in these types of position. And then you look at week 1 against Buffalo. They competed in that game and kept it close. So yeah, you could be seeing a by margin win here from the Cardinals, but last 3 weeks, I've just been very unimpressed with what this team's doing. I don't know if it's a Kyler Murray thing. Is it a head coaching thing? It's just like one of those things that, like, I don't want to back the Patriots, and I'm not going to back the Patriots whatsoever in any type of situational spot currently. And I'm not going to back the Cardinals for a while. I need to watch them actually show some improvement on the offensive side of the ball with Kyler Murray not making mistakes, really staying productive, and consistency is important to me. And this guy, quite frankly, is not consistent enough for me to invest into the spread. So complete pass for me altogether on every single angle in this game.
Yeah, I mean, when I first looked at the board, I was not going to look at this game. But, of course, the extra points, we bring the extra points. I started to look at it. And, Guns, it's exactly what you said. We said this a couple of weeks ago when he covered at Miami. He's kind of like Lamar Jackson Part 2. Running quarterback out of conference, he dominates. These teams don't know how to scheme for him. He's 4-0 ATS against the AFC. And as you mentioned, he's 3-0 ATS against the AFC East this year. And the only home game in that window was a blowout against the Jets, 31-6. So it's very much hot and cold. And, you go back through these games, obviously laying a bunch of eggs recently, 2 margin losses in the division to Seattle. Seattle's beaten them 7 straight times. So is that so much Arizona being terrible or Seattle owning them in the division? And they lost to Minnesota, who's 11-2. So now they come back, they get a non-playoff team, they get an AFC opponent. It's where I think they could turn up and just hammer a team that is obviously very young and in a funky spot. And the last time we saw a rookie quarterback at Arizona, it was Caleb Williams. And Arizona blew out Caleb Williams by margin as well. I have this game graded Arizona win by 16 points.
Don't forget Daniels, Jaden Daniels. They blew him out too, 42-14. So they've knocked out.
No, he blew them out.
Yeah, that's what I meant. No, yeah, you're right. Got it wrong. My fault.
Yeah. No, I was thinking the same thing myself, and I was thinking recently he got Caleb Williams. Early season, he got his ass kicked. But again, that's the polarization of this guy. He blows out teams by margin and then gets hammered. Like, there's almost no in between. These home games this year, they blew out the Rams by 31. So their home wins are all by 20 plus, and their home losses are egregious. There's like literally no middle ground here. So basically, when you're handicapping this game, you say to yourself, all right, is Kyler going to play ball? He's been terrible. He's facing a bad defense and a rookie quarterback? Probably, which means there's probably margin coming here. I would only talk you guys on Arizona in this one. And any thoughts?
Definitely could be a full bounce back spot for them. For me, this is one where I'd like to see Drake May and the Pats offense maybe get up early and then hope that you see or could get a little bit of value on Arizona coming back the other way. But I lean Arizona overall. Just want to see if I can get some better value live and maybe a late little comeback. But I have that bad taste in my mouth. I think we're all in that Arizona spot last week too.
No, agreed. As I said, I wasn't even going to look at it, but when I started to look at it, I thought, this is that spot where everybody says he's terrible, he's done, and then all of a sudden he comes out and just wins like 35-15 or like,
Absolutely.
and just looks like a god again, and then keeps his job for another 2 years and never goes anywhere near the Super Bowl and just continues to hover in mediocrity. It's just classic stuff here. Anyway, last play of the day, last game of the day, 8:20, big-time football, Green Bay at Seattle, Lumen Field, Seattle, Washington. A collaboration official, myself and the odds fellow. I'll throw it to odds first. Green Bay -2.5.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a good spot. We've been talking about Seattle maybe just being in that fade spot with how they looked recently. And you get the other side of the coin is Green Bay trending in the absolute right phenomenal direction here. They got the momentum going. They've got the offense going, especially Jordan Love, right? Is he finally healthy? Is he finally back? I think you're seeing that over his last 3 games. The QB play has been, for lack of a better word, elite. He's averaging 9.1 yards per attempt. That's second in the NFL. He's thrown 5 TDs and no interceptions. Their rushing attack, this is really key for this matchup too. And I think obviously it gets Jordan Love going or vice versa, right? They're a balanced, efficient offense, which I think is key. But the Green Bay rushing attack is led by the 3rd leading rusher in the NFL. That's Josh Jacobs, right? So what does that mean? He can find success against Seattle's 25th ranked rushing defense. They're allowing 4.4 yards per rush. Their 4-game win streak has come 2 games against the Arizona Cardinals, 1 game against the Jets, and a crazy comeback against the reeling Niners. Obviously, we talked about one of those Cardinals games. I was on Seattle in one spot. I was on Arizona in the other. Obviously, I think a lot of that came down to what we were talking about with the Kyler Murray Arizona Cardinals inefficiency. They've been very good in the division, but this is a different type of matchup. This is outside of division. This is against that AFC North powerhouse, another playoff caliber team that we're talking about here from the best division in football. And I think it's just too much balance. So I love it under a field goal. I think Green Bay gets the job done.
Yeah, alignment play here. I have Green Bay at -2.5. And, you know, as Anthony said, both teams are hot here. Green Bay's 3-0 ATS last 3. Seattle is 4-0 ATS last 4, but I think Seattle is a great fade spot. As I just mentioned with the Arizona conversation, Seattle has owned Arizona. So let that be what it is. They're 2-0 against Arizona in the last 4. They also beat San Francisco. This is not San Francisco that we thought they were going to be. This is a team that looked absolutely terrible going back to Thursday Night Football. So that's not nearly as impressive as it looks. And then a win at the Jets, who are 3-10. So not particularly impressive. And Green Bay has a lot to play for here. They want to get the 6th seed in the NFC. They're barely ahead of Washington and the Rams. And this really is where they cannot afford to drop one. Nobody wants to play at Philly in wild card weekend. And that's really what this is. If they don't play at Philly, it actually looks like as of now, Green Bay would actually play at Seattle again in wild card weekend in a rematch of this game. And as I mentioned, I think Seattle's just really in a good sell spot here. Seattle's also 0-2 this year as a home underdog, 0-1 outside of the division. These 2 games where they were an underdog in this range, they got hammered in both. They were +3.5 against San Francisco Thursday Night Football Week 6. San Francisco outgained them 483 to 358. And then slightly later on, Week 8, October 27th, Buffalo -3 in this stadium. Same line outside the division here. Buffalo outgained them 445 to 233 in a blowout, 31-10. I have Green Bay to win this game by 5 on the average. I think margin could develop. And Green Bay is already 3-0 ATS this year against the NFC West, all as a favorite. 1-0 road at the Rams on the same line, -3. Covered it by 2 points on a 5-point win and 2 blowouts at home. There's a significant competitive gap between these divisions. Gunn said it before. I'll say it now. NFC North, Lions, Vikings, Packers, the toughest division in football. And this is more of a mediocre division in the NFC West right now, with a lot of these teams, actually all four, hovering in the middle, a couple games away from each other. Late night special collaboration with the Odds Fellow, who just exited the chat, and we send him all the best energy on this Sunday. Take Green Bay at -2.5. Monday Night Football will be delivered tomorrow. Slight lean here for you guys on this show. We think the Falcons will bounce back. Same thing we said about Arizona. The Falcons have looked terrible. That's where you want to buy them. This is the first time they're favored this year against the AFC West, where they are 0-3 already, all as an underdog. Vegas is not a buy team. They're not a sexy underdog. This is week 15. You don't want to buy these bad teams as underdogs. And divisional football tomorrow night. Bears-Vikings part 2. Tight line, probably a push line. I think the over is best. Hour and a half in the books. We know people didn't have the ability to watch this on X for the first full hour plus. It is live now. We see you guys clicking in abundantly, and we appreciate you guys immensely. Tons of plays on this Sunday. I have 7. Washington -7. A collab with the gun. Detroit -1.5. Money line as well. Chargers -2.5. Late night special. Green Bay -2.5. Collab with the Odds Fellow. 3-way collab. Cincinnati -4.5. It is 5.5 now. Jets, Jags over 40.5. Justin Herbert passing yards over 241.5. The gun and Odds Fellow collab under Miami, Houston 47.5. The Odds Fellow, his play of the year, Pittsburgh +5.5. The gun with Jacksonville +3.5. Indianapolis, Denver over 44. And Stone Smart, a smart play over receiving yards 29.5. We appreciate you guys immensely. As we said, nobody could see this for the first hour. I will be sharing this throughout the next 90 minutes, sending you guys amazing vibes on this beautiful Sunday. The best of times are now. For the Odds Fellow who already signed out, it is Guns Picks. Close them out with some words, and let's dominate.
Yeah, shout out to everybody that joined us here live on a Sunday. Taking time out of your schedule to go check us out. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Guns Picks channel. Make sure you like and subscribe to the Sharky Waters Nation channel on YouTube. And follow us along on X at Guns Picks, GUNZPICKS, and Sharks N Sports 88 on X if you haven't done the follow already. But appreciate everybody that's joined us here on this beautiful Sunday morning. We'll be back Thursday, of course. And then Friday, guess what? We're going to do an early show at 6 p.m. East to break down the college football slate. College football playoff is going to start Friday night. So it's going to be an electric time here in bowl season. So let's cash some tickets. Let's dominate the bowl. And as always, let's keep dancing. Bang.